America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and one of the big problems with healthcare in the United States is the way we talk about healthcare in the United States. And I'm going to clear all of that up in probably 5 minutes. I think I'm going to do a little short stream, answer some questions, and then get out. So one of the problems with healthcare in the United States is that we have this idea about risk, and that health insurers pool risk, and they mix healthy people with unhealthy people, and they bet that everyone's going to be healthy. That way they can collect premiums, and they're not going to pay out because nobody's going to get sick. That is not the way healthcare works in the United States. That's the way we talk about healthcare working in the United States. How healthcare actually works in the United States is that everybody is going to get, practically destined, is going to get some sort of outlandishly expensive health issue. And the health insurance companies make their money by figuring out a way to deny coverage. They're not betting against you being sick. They're betting against you being a sucker. Right? So it's not a pool of healthy people and unhealthy people. It's a pool of suckers versus non-suckers. The non-suckers have the wherewithal and the resources to fight to get their healthcare claims honored, and then the suckers get denied because everybody has health issues. The suckers are just going to be the ones who get denied when they have their routine health issue, because part of what it is to grow older in America is to eventually, have a heart thing or get a cancer, and that's just part of what it is to be. We need to admit that it's not some sort of random occurrence of bad luck that you're going to have a really expensive health issue. It's just a part of life that you are going to have at least one really expensive health issue. And then you add in preventative care on top of that. We just need to admit that health care costs more than, salaries pay in a meaningful way. And we don't want lives to be such that you can save your money and save, do everything that Dave Ramsey tells you to do for 20 years and then all get wiped away with a health issue, because you're going to have a health issue that's going to be big enough to wipe away all of your salaries, right? So unless we want everybody working for like the same 5 companies that offer health insurance or the government or something like that, then we want to admit that healthcare costs, and both with healthcare events, but also preventative care and routine preventative care and healthcare events, and then aftercare. They're just too much of a person's salary such that we need the government to play a huge role in mitigating those costs. In the same way that the cost of educating a child properly in America would be too expensive, given all the extracurriculars and co-curricular activities. So we have the government help pay for schools, right? So we need to understand that just the cost of living needs to be socialized. In the same way that we socialize the cost of like appropriately rearing good Americans, the cost of living needs to be appropriately socialized. So as long as you show that you contribute to America, you get the benefits of the excesses of America, which means all the healthcare that you need. Right? So this healthcare is a human right, I think, confuses the issue because it's not a human right, it's a social right. But that means you just need to prove that you participate, contribute to society. Not at a level that earns all dollar for dollar your healthcare, because that's a ridiculous level. Healthcare has gotten ridiculous, like it's expensive. And it's only outlandish relative to our salaries. But you take away our salaries and it's not outlandish, it just costs what it costs. It costs what it costs. But our salaries also are what they are, and they shouldn't be compared. They shouldn't be compared. So it's a social right insofar as you show that you participate in society, you should get all of the healthcare, regardless of how it's pegged to your earning or your insurance. So we need to talk about healthcare not as a healthcare issue, not as an event that might happen, but as an eventuality of what it is to live in America. And we need to not pretend that we're pooling or saving premiums or betting against the eventuality of a bad health, or that our premiums over the course of our life will be able to pay for the health care we will need. It will not. It will not. My dad died of cancer, and I don't have the greatest heart. So eventually there's going to be some like ridiculously expensive heart or cancer thing in my future. And, I had a colonoscopy earlier this year. Who knows how much that cost? Like out of pocket. There's a way in which I think they make the costs up, but nobody knows. Nobody knows. But we need to understand that the business model of insurance companies isn't betting that you're going to be healthy. It's betting that they could successfully deny your claim when you have a health insurance. And that is one of the reasons why we need to just take that kind of market out of existence. Because they're betting on you being a sucker. They're betting on you being a sucker. And that's the problem. So we need to get this idea about risk pools out, because just assume and accept that everyone's going to get sick in the same way that everyone's going to use roads and everyone is going to, use some form of school or co-curricular activity, and just socialize that aspect of human life, not as a matter of risk. Because it's not about when you're going to get this $100,000 medical issue. It's only a matter about when. It's not about if, it's about when. And as soon as it becomes not about if, but about when, then we need to take it out of the if pool and just understand that the cost of living in America includes some sort of really specific healthcare related, outlandishly expensive issue, concern, right? And that's just what it costs to be to participate in American society in an advanced world where we can have tests that catch all of these things that would have just killed you 3 generations ago. And we can have, and I'm a pretty healthy guy. Like, I'm going to have an incredible health bill for some reason in 20 years or between now and 20 years. And I'm like, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I exercise every day, but still it's going to happen just because that's how much healthcare costs. And like, we have to stop pretending that it's kept pace with salaries, that our healthcare needs have kept pace with salaries, or that it's a reasonable chunk of a salary, or we live in a world where at any point all of your savings can be wiped away by a health issue that is predictable. And there's nothing you can really do about it, because the insurance company's game is not betting that you won't get sick. That's at the superficial level. They're betting on when you get sick, they can figure out a way to deny your claim. And that is the insidious aspect of health insurance. It's not pooling the sick and the non-sick. It's pooling the suckers and the non-suckers. And they want more suckers in the pool so that when you get sick, they don't care if you get sick. They just care if they can effectively deny your claim. That's the model. They don't care if you get sick. They care if you can effectively get your claim denied. Right? They care if you get sick. They'd like be pushing for preventative care in a way that sometimes they're not. So, and if we're talking about like scheduled preventative care as a way of life, then we need to stop talking about risk, because you're not at risk for getting a colonoscopy. You're not at risk of getting preventative care. You're supposed to do it. It's a routine aspect of living. So at least preventative care should be off this risk model. But now the risk model pretty much has a monopoly on preventative care. So I think we just need to get the risk talk out of healthcare and just understand that both you're going to have a health issue. That's just going to happen. That's part of what it is to live. And also the health issue you have is going to be infinitely expensive relative to whatever salary you have. So much so, and I say it's infinitely expensive, it's just going to be so much so that it really undermines your will to save. Because it will, like, if you had to pay it, it would zero you out. Right? So we need to stop trying to peg money that's earned to healthcare that's needed. Because that math only makes sense at the macro level. Most people do not earn money relative to the healthcare that they need. And that is fine, because America is set up to absorb. We allow America is set up as a wealth generating machine so to allow people to not necessarily personally earn enough money to cover their healthcare, but we need to effectively socialize it, not go through these insurance as middle people to whose business model is to deny your claim. Right? So the myth is that their business model is to keep you keep you well so that you never have to use health insurance, right? But that's not their business model. Their business model understands that you will have a health issue. They just don't want to be responsible for paying for it. So their business model is figuring out a way to get you off the books or somehow denied claims. Get your claim denied when you obviously have your ridiculously high, not ridiculously high, outlandish relative to your salary health issue. Right? Everything else is smoke and mirrors. Their business model is denying your claim. Not mixing the pool with healthy and unhealthy people. They don't care how unhealthy you are, as long as they're unhealthy in a way that they can effectively deny your claim. So we need to get this talk of risk out of the health insurance. I actually think legal is a similar issue, although I think you can skate through this life without being submerged by legal bills. But in a nation of laws, I don't think that that's a particularly productive of freedom. So that's another thing where legal bills can quickly make a mockery out of any Dave Ramsey-esque savings scheme. So this is about healthcare. Next, maybe I'll talk about legal care. A different issue, I'll talk about legal care. But we need to, one, acknowledge that really expensive health issues are an eventuality. And that's perfectly appropriate and relative to, and really outlandish relative to the wages you're set to earn or any of your saving or spending patterns. And that we don't want to live in a world where one health issue or a series of health issues can just make a mockery out of 20 years of responsible living and responsible saving. So that's a thing we need to acknowledge. And two, we need to acknowledge that health issues aren't reasonably priced. They aren't at a scale of wages. They aren't priced at a scale that's responsive to our private incomes. And so we need to socialize it. We need to bail out the people. Same way we need to bail out big banks, we need to bail out the people when they have their health care issues. And I think we should treat people as if they're too big to fail. So that's my issue. But all of this gets confused if we talk about healthcare as a risk pooling and health insurance as a risk pooling agency, as if people won't have a very expensive, outlandishly expensive relative to their salaries and premiums, outlandishly expensive health issue. Right? And health insurance companies are now viable, not because of clever business practices in terms of pooling healthy people with unhealthy people. They're viable because they don't care if you're healthy or unhealthy. They just care if they can find a way to deny your claim. Adding a dependent pretty much charges you a car note a month for healthcare. Yeah, it's a ridiculous model because their model is actually just figuring out a way to deny a claim, not actually it's not internally consistent. It's a scheme because we talk about a model that might have been viable, 3 generations ago when we couldn't catch things and we couldn't fix things and we couldn't have teams of experts that actually save lives. But we now have that. We have medevacs and we have teams of experts that can save lives. And we think that that's an important thing to do, and especially for the person who's living. And so, and all of those things are outlandishly expensive relative to salaries, although they could be democratized. Just because not everyone has every event at every time. But we just understand that everyone's going to need some sort of very expensive, outlandishly expensive relative to your salary or wage healthcare. And this current model with people are incentivized to deny healthcare, it doesn't really help anyone except funneling people into a certain number of industries, a certain quality of industries. That's not particularly good for, I think, American civil society. And I don't think we just need to admit some facts about human life and about the cost of healthcare and about the need for healthcare as an inelastic good that just outstrips people's salaries. So don't peg. Let's stop trying to peg healthcare to premiums or quality of healthcare to premiums or some idea that the premium market will match what you need. Because that's not the business model. Their business model for United Healthcare and Cigna or whatever is that the premium market will match what they can deny you, right? So they're in the business of not healthy people versus sick people and betting on healthy people. They're in the business on betting on their ability to deny you without repercussions. And that is not, a particularly healthful way to think about to actually run healthcare in the United States. So if you appreciate what I'm saying, I don't think anyone else has made this kind of argument. In the whole internet, I don't think anyone else has made this argument. One, that we get the business model of healthcare wrong. We get the business, and this idea of pooling risk is wrong. And it's really not about healthy and unhealthy. It's about suckers versus non-suckers. And the non-suckers get the insurance companies to pay their claims, and the suckers just get denied. If you take away the dubious denials, the healthcare industry is not viable. So it needs dubious denials. So we have an entire industry based on trying to carve out a space for dubious denials, because that's the profit. Because everybody's healthcare costs more than their premiums if they actually got the healthcare. So they're in the business now of denying people healthcare. Right? They're not betting against you being healthy. They're betting that when you fall ill, they'll be able to deny it. And we have a legal system that's around so that when you fall ill, they'll be able to deny it. And that's the whole model with some marketing and a patina of other issues. But we need to understand that you will fall ill. It will be an absurdly expensive issue for you to deal with. And it's got nothing to do with how much you pay in your premiums and everything to do with how whatever insurance company is kind of poised to figure out a way to deny your claim. And that's just the truth. We need to admit that healthcare costs more than salaries and savings, than salaries and savings. Even if you would have kept that money from your premiums and paid out of pocket, it still would have cost more than that. So any system that depends on denying people claims, and which our current health system does, isn't really an internal, internally consistent, internally consistent system. What it is a system of denying people claims. I mean, it's only viable if we deny people justified claims. And that's kind of garbage. All right, so we need to, nationalize it or socialize it. Think of it like schools and roads. We might have private options if you want them, but for the most part, everybody gets all of the care that we think that people deserve. And we need to decide. There's a list of things that are considered elective, and then there's a list of things that are covered. Nobody should ever have to pay a dime for having a baby, or even worry about it paying a dime for having a baby, whatever it costs. For getting cancer, for having a heart thing. These are just things that happen to people as they age. It's an eventuality. You might not have all of them, but This idea that you're going to live your life without a outlandishly expensive medical issue is, I think, is not adequate, especially since now that we have all of these diagnostics in order to test for outlandishly expensive health issues. It's gonna see. It's just not. You're not just gonna wake up and pop dead because we're like. And now we have scheduled routine checkups. So all of these things should just be a part of life, and a part of life. Understanding that they're a part of life that can't be paid for individually by individual lives. They need to be paid for at the social level, right? And pooled and paid for and understood. And unless you can tell me that this is going to cause massive inflation, then we should just do it. Print money for it. Bail out people for their preventative care. All right. Thank you for your time. And I will talk to you another time to talk about something else. Peace. Any big questions in chat before I cut off? Yeah, we got Powerball health. We got a Powerball healthcare system. Yeah, but it's not even that, because you're going to have something. You're going to have a $500,000 procedure in your future, or like worth of a drug cocktail in your future. That's just destiny. You're destined to have that. And that might be appropriate. We just need to understand that you're destined to have that and not pretend that you're not. All right. Take care.